Okay, so in the previous video we did the grid dimensioning here. Now what makes sense is to just go ahead and show individual dimensions, say for instance here on these infill beams. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to my plan view since it's nice and easy to work in a 2D view to apply your dimensions. Now the way this works is if you just double click on the model dimension plugin, it will open up the dialog box. We can specify the size, the offset between the picking points and where it puts the dimension line. Again, also a group, which is great for doing filtering. So it tags the finish field of the objects created in the dimension and puts them all in, like say, whatever this group name is. So if you wanted to do view filters or drawing filters for your plan dimensions versus elevation, you could specify different group names here if you'd want to. You can put the class number for basically the color. You can specify any font type that you want to work with here. And then you can even override like the actual dimension value, like if you wanted to put XXX, if you're saying approve or please provide, as well as put in prefix things in the dimension line and a suffix as well. So once you've got that all set, you just say apply. And then if you look at the lower left hand corner, it says pick the origin point. So because we're working in a 3D model space versus just 2D drawings, we sort of need to pick the UCS or the coordinate system in order to define how the dimensions are going to be aligned and then the text is going to be orientated. So when you first put in a dimension here, what you'll want to do is you'll pick the origin point, and then your Y offset that you put in the dialog box is going to be from that first point picked. And then the second point is basically just any point that defines the X direction. So I'll just pick over here as an example. Then the third point is your y-axis point. Now this is important because if you picked down here, your text will be upside down versus like how you probably want it. So the y direction is important. Here I want all my dimensions to go left to right, and I want the text to be above here, so I'm just going to go ahead and click. And now it says pick the dimension points. So here's where I actually pick the dimension points that I want to dimension. And let's say I mess something up here, right? If I do that, if you just press backspace, it'll allow you to re-enter the last point you picked, so that way you don't have to exit the command. And then you just keep on picking. Once you're all done, you middle mouse button, and then here it'll actually put that in. So now you've got this intelligent plugin that is basically lined up here with those three picking points. Now let's say for instance this beam, if you need to move it, you can grab both the beam and select on the component and window around just that endpoint there to do like a normal stretch. And then let's just go ahead and say we move that over 12 inches. Now you'll see that the dimension strings update there, and you're good to go to see that those dimensions are intelligent and parametric. Now, if you have like lots of beams that you're adding and things that you're changing in the middle here, another way of going about this is actually just doing individual dimensions and then copying them. So what does that mean? So like here, I'll just go ahead and select the X, and then I'll select a Y, and then I'll pick these 2 points here, and we'll just middle mouse button. So now I have like basically an individual dimension, and if I just copy this, I can copy this to whatever bays I want. And then what's great about this is that I can just stretch and manipulate these. So instead of a string of dimensions, I can modify and manipulate individual dimensions and just copy them around. That helps save a little bit of time instead of having to pick that XYZ. And if the number of beams or additional beams gets added or deleted here, you can easily just delete out whatever dimensions you need or copy and add additional ones as required. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a Y dimension. So we'll just activate the command, and this time I'm going to pick the origin point, and then I'm going to pick the X direction is going to be in the Y global UCS, right? And then I'll pick here, because I want the text to kind of be going upwards this way. And then I'm just going to simply pick, and I'm going to intentionally pick different dimensions here and different locations, and then middle mouse button. So you'll see that the offset value, so when I double click on this, the offset value here is being offset in the Y direction from the original X point that you, or the origin point that you pick. And so that's what it does, is the first points you're picking is defining the orientation in which the dimension lines are going to be, and then that way you can pick any kind of dimension points that are sort of out of plane there, and it will properly dimension them. It's fairly similar to the drawing dimensioning command. And again, now you can see that I've got dimensions in the y-axis instead of just the x-axis. Well, let's go back to the 3D view. Just like here, we saw that these vertical dimensions are in here. If I actually just explode the grid dimensions component, this is all now just like kind of individual text objects, right? Which we're going to cover that one in a minute. But then these are also individual dimension objects. So you can manipulate and change these as well. And just like we did horizontal dimensions, we can also do vertical dimensions. The only difference is that for our x, we'd basically pick vertically. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to pick here as a base point, pick that second point, pick there as my y point. Then pretty much all I got to do is just pick these points, middle mouse button, and there we go. Now we have vertical dimensions. So this can be for slopes, for like stairs, skews, anything. Whatever basically coordinate system you pick, the dimensions will be aligned.